We're joined from Cairo by Dr. Muhammad Osman, International Relations Specialist, and from Washington by Mrs. Ginger Chapman, lawyer and political analyst. Welcome to Q News. And I'll start with you, Dr. Osman. Now, Britain, Canada, and Australia, long-time allies of Israel, have formally recognized Palestine. How significant is this diplomatic shift in the global order?
Thank you for having me, Hannah.
Greetings
to you, to Mrs. Chapman, and to your honorable audience. Of course, we are on the precipice of a historical development, indeed, because right now the Palestinian state is garnering ever more recognition than any previous time in history since the state of Palestine was proclaimed by the Palestinian Liberation Organization in 1988. As things stand, over 152 countries have recognized Palestine, and more countries are expected to follow suit after Canada, Britain, Australia. France is expected to issue a recognition maybe within a few hours or a few days. The same goes for Malta. Portugal also did recognize Palestine yesterday or the day before yesterday. So it is rather an immense boost for the Palestinian cause and its universal legitimacy. However, of course, this step so far, despite its magnitude, is merely symbolic at this stage, Hannah. As you very well know, you recognizing something, this something has to exist on the ground first. It has to have a physical existence that is touchable, tangible, and able to function properly so that it might actually be meaningful one way or the other. And the thing is that the Israelis are making sure that the Palestinian state will be all but an impossibility through the policies they undertake on the ground. So powers like Britain, and Australia and France and Canada and the multitude of Western countries that have recently recognized Palestine's need to back their action, the decision with concrete action in order to pressure Israel to stop its bleeding of the Palestinian cause and the Palestinian nation. Literally, they are bleeding out the Palestinian nation as we speak, killing thousands of Palestinians and taking away land from the Palestinians, both in the West Bank and in Gaza. So this is something that needs to be explored by those countries, because before they recognized Palestine, 147 countries already did recognize Palestine. Palestine, when it was proclaimed back in 1988, about 80 countries recognized it, including back then the Soviet Union, for example, and the entire Eastern Bloc and the entirety of the Arab and Muslim world, 57 countries. So as you can see, Hala, it doesn't matter how many countries recognize you. What really matters is putting an end or putting a stop to the Israeli transgressions and violations on the ground. Israel on the ground is making sure that it will never allow the proclamation or the establishment, actually, of a Palestinian state.
Yes.
And they are even threatening that they will retaliate with very harsh measures.
Perhaps, Dr. Osman, the weight here is that those are veto countries, and that makes the U.S. somehow isolated. So I will get back to that point with you, but I will go now to Mrs. Chapman. As I mentioned, Mrs. Chapman, now the United States is now the only permanent member of the UN Security Council that does not recognize Palestine. How does this affect Washington's credibility as an international mediator in conflicts?
Thank you, Hala, for having us today. Greetings to your viewers and to Dr. Osman, your other guest.
Thank you.
And this does affect America's credibility, but more than being the lone holdout, the veto on the Security Council, this shows that the United States is out of step, and we are only motivated to unconditionally support Israel, even though this is ultimately acting against the long-term interests of the United States. And indeed, we do see that America is engaging in many chaotic activities, and our relationship with Israel is putting us in a position where a great example is President Trump and his envoy, Steve Witkoff, arranged a negotiation, arranged to have Hamas be in Qatar, in Doha, for negotiation to consider our latest peace proposal, at which point Israel strikes Hamas. strikes the negotiating team. This is an incredible black eye to the United States, in addition to it being a war crime and a violation of another country's sovereignty, essentially an attack on an ally of the United States. It makes the United States appear just as deceptive and duplicitous as our alleged ally in the Middle East. And this has only served to increase and escalate the tensions in the area. And one of the risks, as Dr. Osman pointed out, is that this recognition finally of Palestine as a state comes after Israel has destroyed all of the administrative infrastructure of a state. For example, the ability to make currency, the ability to have administrative offices to govern any regions, the ability to even to pick up the garbage, to have sanitation and education. So Israel has intentionally destroyed all of the state infrastructure that Gaza and Palestine, the West Bank, would normally have. This has been an ongoing campaign, which is why they could not allow the Palestinian Authority or the PLO to ever assume any sort of governance, because if there's any sort of governance, then it would appear that Palestine could indeed run itself. So we are entering another dangerous period. Israel has said they're going to step up their campaign. Indeed, we have seen they have stepped up the rate of bombing, bulldozing buildings, habitations, destroying hospitals, schools. They've stepped up the rate of, the rate of slaughter in Gaza. And we have two dangers here. One is that France, England, the United Nations, they say that the process of recognition is what will be an effective disarmament of Hamas by allowing another form of governance to take shape. So the recognition process and the peace process will shut Hamas out of a new Palestinian state. The danger is getting bogged down in this administration so that the process itself becomes the obstacle. And the other danger that we are seeing is that, people are looking at Israeli Representative Ron Dormer's comments from a couple of months ago, where he has threatened that if recognition becomes closer, then their last resort will be to actively go after Iran and create a massive escalation in Iran, the sort of which will devastate the entire region. So this is a very critical time for us. We have a lot of dangers. We must keep an eye on the process within the United Nations and how that is developing. And then also, once again, Israel's on the ground. They want to settle in E1 area. They've openly said now that their intention is for there to never be a Palestinian state. Now this is out in the open. So the desperation on the part of Netanyahu, the discontent, he is now, the families of the hostages in Israel are now saying they realize this means the hostages, they will not get their family members back. The government of Israel has turned against the members of the hostage families, calling them traitors and obstacles to essentially to Netanyahu's agenda. So the unrest in Israel is increasing. More people are fleeing Israel as it gets
Netanyahu's agenda,
more
which is not announced to the Israeli population, right?
Correct. And this is all coming out as developments, as things develop. And a result of that is the more moderate Israelis, the more secular Israelis are leaving Israel. Of course, this leaves Israel with a more radicalized population that feels the world is against them, at the same time that the rest of the world is indeed looking at Israel and attempting to stop the genocide and the massive expansionist land grab, which is destabilizing the entire region.
Yes.
So once again, we see this situation is on the brink of spiraling out of control. This is why the United Nations process over the annual meeting is going to be very revealing. Keep an eye on what Israel does and says, and also the United States. We are in our own disarray and chaos here in the United States, and our support for Israel is becoming this is becoming a battle within the American people.
Yes.
So
Obviously.
the United States is volatile, Israel, the region. Even though the recognition is coming, we are entering the most dangerous period.
Yes. Dr. Osman, now with France leading the push at the UN General Assembly, why there are other European states, on the other hand, reluctant to recognize Palestine, like Germany? And do you see momentum towards Palestine's full UN membership? And also, I'd like you to comment on what Ms. Chapman said regarding the dangers facing the region as a result of such recognition.
I think that further European recognition will not be the determinant whether Palestine gets granted a UN membership or not, because this is a political and a legal matter, actually, and for Palestine to be granted a full UN membership, this needs to be approved first by the Security Council, and afterwards it has to be approved by about 2/3 of the UN General Assembly. And of course, you know, this is dead in its cradle when it is in the Security Council, because the Security Council means it requires at least the consent or at least the abstention of all of either the consent or the abstention of the 5 permanent members of the council. And as you just said, and Ms. Chapman just said, the US now is singled out as the only one of the big 5 that is still refusing to recognize Palestine and to unconditionally support Israel. Of course, they will veto such a motion. So basically, this will never happen, unfortunately, as long as the United States maintains its position of the Israel-Palestine conflict. So the idea of Palestine obtaining UN membership, it doesn't matter of all the 193 member states, including the United States, if they recognize Palestine. But the United States still maintains that Palestine should not be a member of the United Nations, that it will not be a member of the United Nations. So this is the unfortunate state of affairs that we have reached. And of course, this just exposes how flawed the international system is and the UN system is. This system that was established in the post-World War II era is now basically obsolete. It does not fit the current circumstances and the current conditions anymore. And as for what Ms. Chapman alluded to, the idea of regional escalation, of course, I do completely agree with her, because I think that the Israelis are pushing for further escalation in the region to deflect attention from the carnage and the obscene crimes they are committing in Gaza and in the occupied Palestinian territories. And I fear, Hala, that now after the expanded recognition that Israel now has been provoked like a mad beast. So this mad beast means that their action entails that the worst is still to come, maybe the possible annexation of the West Bank, more carnage in the Gaza Strip, attempting to move forward with the complete displacement of the Palestinians out of the Gaza Strip, with all of the regional dangers this entails in terms of security and stability. And also they might even move to defund completely the Palestinian Authority, or attempt to even remove it entirely and dissolve it from the occupied territories, from Ramallah and the other areas in the West Bank, which basically will make it a government in exile. And we know that governments in exiles never really work. So I think, unfortunately, as long as Israel pursues unwarranted escalation and violations without any constraints placed on them, we will see the worst. And the problem is that the United States, of course, as we all know, provides unlimited and unconditional support to Israel. It's even reported now that the United States has greenlit the partial annexation of parts of the West Bank, which would be a disaster if it actually occurs, and it might actually inflame the West Bank and ignite another intifada over there. And also, what's but really important at this point is that these European countries and Western nations, they have to back their recognition with concrete measures. Concrete measures mean that they have to pursue a regime of sanctions that need to be applied on Israel, a very stringent one, in order to counterbalance the unlimited support and political cover the United States provides to the state of Israel. If this does not happen, Hala, then what these countries are doing is merely a preemptive exoneration of themselves of what is to come.
Yes. And we have just seen footage now on the screen reminding us of the United States vetoing even reaching a ceasefire in Gaza. Now, Mrs. Chapman, how do you interpret the fact that America's closest allies, the UK, Canada, and Australia, have taken a stance that contradicts Washington on the recognition of Palestine?
Well, this stance is actually a reflection of how complex the entire global situation is, because the E3 countries, France, UK, Germany, these are also the countries that most want to attack Russia. These are the countries that want to bring down Russia. They've had this as a long-seated goal. And unfortunately, their ambitions to remove Putin, break apart the Russian Federation, and take the Russian resources are affecting their ability to deal honestly with the Israel-Palestine situation. And this is because on one hand, they want to see what kind of leverage they can get over Russia with Israel by going through Iran. Iran has ties to essentially trying to take down the Russia, China, Iran triad. They are going to try to go through Israel. And so they have contradictory goals, the E3 and the rest of the Europe. Well, the E3 specifically, they have contradictory goals. They are torn between their desire to take down Russia and going through Iran. They're caught in this very unusual situation with Israel, which is complicating things further. And at the same time, the United States, once again, our foreign policy is in chaos. We are spread out too thin all over the world. We're thinking about Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan, regime change in Venezuela, fighting the cartels in Mexico. And it looks as though we're finally pivoting away from China, because we have realized that we need to focus on our own hemisphere as the global situation becomes more dire, focusing back in on the Middle East. Once again, as Dr. Osman said, Israel is going to become more desperate. They are tactics of destroying the settlements in the West Bank. And the United States is going to try to back them as best we can. What we really need to get around the United States' dogged support of Israel is really the rest of the countries to embargo Israel, to institute arms embargoes, economic embargoes, ships not using their ports, do not let their ships enter other ports. We really need a global economic embargo effort on the part of all of these other countries to get around the United States blockage in the United Nations and the other entangled cross-country politics. And one more thing I was going to mention. I will just turn it back over to you, Hala. Thank you.
Okay, but because you just made me feel that the world now is like we're looking at a chessboard where everyone has various interests and we're expecting the next move. So yes, you're absolutely right, and I'll go back to you again. Yes, it's a chessboard, right? And Dr. Osman, Netanyahu vowed that there will be no Palestinian state. He also said that Israel plans to retaliate by annexing more parts of the occupied West Bank. Now, how will this open defiance affect Israel's already strained relations with Europe?
You know, it's as if sometimes I feel, Hala, that the most of the world sometimes, especially the Western world, is either blind and deaf intentionally, because Netanyahu has been saying that for decades, actually, that the Palestinian state will never exist. He was saying that since his first premiership in the late 1990s to completely sabotage a very serious peace process back then that was undercut by the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, the prime minister of Israel back then, who was apparently way more eager, along with the Israeli left, to actually reach a peaceful settlement. And of course, Netanyahu has taken Israeli bloodlust and madness and unilateral thinking to a whole new level after the 7th of October. It's as if this was the ultimate chance, the ultimate opportunity for him, first to evade his own political problems, to avoid accountability on account of his own corruption and cronyism, along with his wife Sarah and his family and his other lackeys, and also to exonerate or at least attempt to evade responsibility for the disaster of October 7th. So what he's doing right now is trying in this very tyrannic, with this very tyrannic mentality, trying to establish the land of Greater Israel, and is even using biblical texts and biblical narrative in order to attract the support of the zealots and the radicals inside Israeli society, and even among the evangelical, some segments of evangelical Christianity in the West, who also share some of these.
This is an old political game that has been used by tyrants throughout history.
Exactly. He's playing the same game. He reminds me of for example, political Islamists. They do the same thing, for example.
It's been since the dawn of history.
Exactly. You know, how religion could be sometimes a nationalism at the same time. Two very sacred ideas can be used so maliciously by state actors. So this is what Netanyahu is doing. So now he is putting his words into action by actually ensuring that the Palestinian state never exists. So, and we've seen that, for example, let alone carnage in Gaza and the West Bank, which most of the Palestinian state exists, and were the more important urban centers of Palestine, and also Jerusalem. East Jerusalem exists, which is recognized as the capital of the state of Palestine, East Jerusalem. Now he revealed his plans, or he approved the plan to establish the E1 settlement complex, for example. What does that do? And he did that preemptively, of course. It bisects the West Bank. It prevents the establishment of a coherent Palestinian state, and turns the West Bank into an archipelago of Palestinian cantons and communities that are not interconnected, that have to go through Israeli checkpoints and barriers. And
it's all preventing the establishment of a real state, as we all said, with its infrastructure and everything.
The only way that this can be answered, again, and I'm sorry for repeating myself, is by imposing sanctions.
Yes.
So if the Europeans are not willing to impose sanctions,
and Mrs. Chapman just said the same. Embargo on Israel.
I completely agree with Mrs. Chapman, of course, since Europe is one of the largest trade partners of Israel.
Yes.
So they campaign Israel and pressure it if they want.
Mrs. Chapman, I would like to thank you so much, and also Dr. Mohammed Osman. We had with us Dr. Mohammed Osman, International Relations Specialist. Thank you so much. And also Mrs. Ginger Chapman, lawyer and political analyst. Thank you both for your valuable insights. It has been a very enjoyable interview with both of you.